make a couple years ago. One night, as I was headed off to church, I got a call from a friend of mine. He lives about an hour away from me. So he called me and he said, "Hey, Scott, could you come pick me up and take me to church with you? See, my church I go to meets on a Saturday night." So he said, "Could you come pick me up and take me to church with you? I really don't have a car right now." So I said, "Sure, I'll come get you." So I drove to his house, about an hour away. I didn't mind doing that. Picked him up, took him to church, glad to do it. On the way home from church, he's talking to me, and he says, "Well, you know, what happened to my car?" He said, I thought the insurance was too much for it, and the registration, I didn't want to pay that, so I just didn't pay it. And it just kind of expired. And he said, "But I chose to drive my car anyway." And of course, as you can imagine, he got pulled over. His car got impounded, and his license got revoked. I had a problem, because he wanted to start coming to church with me every Saturday night. An hour out of my way, one way. I had to make a decision here. I had to say, okay, what do I do? I mean, first of all, I know he's got his own church. He's got his own church locally that he's able to go to. It's a great church. It teaches good Bible messages there. I said, also, I have to drive now an hour to his house to get him, go to church, then drive an hour back home. That's 2 hours just to get him because he didn't feel like paying his insurance. But as a Christian, I thought, well, isn't it my responsibility to make sure that he gets Bible teaching? Where does this fall? What kind of decision do I make here? How do I determine what is the healthiest way for a Christian to respond to the situation? Well, thanks to the Apostle Paul, I had the answer. And the answer is to lay down some boundaries. Paul talks about boundaries in Galatians 6, 2 through 5. If you have your Bibles, if you use the Bibles in here, that's page 1155. Galatians 6, 2 through 5. Page 1155 in the Church Bible. And here's what it says. Paul says, "Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. If anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. For each one should test his own actions. Then he could take pride in himself without comparing himself to someone else. For each one should carry his own load." Boundaries. Boundaries is what Paul is talking about here. Boundaries will help answer the questions, as a Christian, how do we balance the call to serve with the need for self-preservation? What is appropriate, what's not? What is selfish and what is godly? When is it okay to say no to things that are asked of me? When do I need to say yes to things? What do I do when others don't do what they should? That's what boundaries is going to cover. I told my friend asked me, "Can you come get me every week for this?" I told my friend, no. No, I won't pick you up every week. I won't take 2 hours out of my schedule and come pick you up. I did tell him, however, I said, when you save enough money, I will take you down and pay the fine. And then when you have your community service that he has to do for this little incident, I said, I will take you to community service. But I'm not going to take you every week to church. If you're going to have a healthy emotional life, you need to set healthy boundaries. If you want to have successful relationships, you need to set boundaries right at the beginning. If you want to be happy in life, if you want to be clear with your boundaries with others, you're going to have to learn to decide what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. So what are boundaries? Well, boundaries are simply a property line, a border. A couple of years ago, Ryan and I, we bought a farm property. We had to hire a surveyor to come out. He went around the property. He marked off the land. He marked off what is ours, what is not. Some of that land has a rock wall on it. Other side, that borders our property and our neighbor's property, there's a stream. If I go on the other side of the property, I'm no longer on my land. As long as I stay within those borders, I'm in my land. I could do what I want. I could cut down trees. I could take brush and make big brush piles if I want. I can carry a shotgun around if I want on my own property. I can park a rusty old car there. I can't do that across the border. And those borders define what is my property. Just like a physical piece of land needs physical boundaries, our lives need mental and emotional boundaries in order to maintain a healthy and emotional spiritual life. These boundaries establish what is mine, what is not mine, what I own, what I don't own. Picture it like a piece of land. This piece of land is your life. It's who you are. This piece of property, this piece of land has a fence around it, or a hedgerow. It also has a gate. We'll make this into a gate here. This gate lets you determine who comes on your property and who doesn't. You're the one who opens and closes the gate. Boundaries help keep the good stuff in, the bad stuff out. Boundaries help distinguish what is our responsibility and what is someone else's responsibility. So, for example, suppose his truck broke down. He called me up and he says, "Hey, Scott, I have to get to work tomorrow. My truck broke down. I know you're not working tomorrow. Could I borrow your vehicle? My truck's in the shop. They'll have it back to me tomorrow night. Can I borrow your Ford? Because my GMC broke down." So I say, "You know what? Yeah, you can borrow my car for the day. Carry each other's burdens." Well, that night, I'm waiting for Frank to return my car. He doesn't show up. So I give him a call. I said, "Frank, where's the car?" "Well, you know what? I decided to keep it. I decided that this worked out pretty well. So I'm going to stop making payments on my truck. I'm going to turn it in. I'm going to stop making payments. I'm going to stop paying the insurance and the registration. I'm just going to keep your car indefinitely." Well, no, because that is no longer a burden. That is now your daily load, your daily responsibility. And you're trying to get me to cover for your daily responsibility. So, Frank, no, you can't have my car indefinitely. You could have it if your truck breaks down, but that's it. Where am I? Frank. The Apostle Paul, Ford versus GM. The Apostle Paul tells us that we're responsible for a couple things. First thing we're responsible for is to carry each other's burdens. In the Greek, that means unexpected burdens, heavy burdens, things that you don't know are coming your way, and then they just show up. Apostle Paul tells us we're to carry each other's burdens. His car breaks down, it's a burden. If I could help you out, I will. There's another thing that we're responsible for. The Apostle Paul tells us we're to carry our own daily load, our own daily living responsibilities. That's what the Greek means, the daily living responsibilities. And it is Frank's responsibility to make sure that he has a vehicle, not mine. And it's my responsibility to make sure that I have a vehicle. So, the Apostle Paul says, help each other with their unexpected burdens, but each person should carry their own load. I mean, that's a huge piece of information. That helps us categorize these things a little bit easier. It's a huge piece of information the Apostle Paul gives us. Boundaries are what we're going to use to define those responsibilities and put those responsibilities into effect. They're going to help us differentiate our responsibilities and say, hey, that's not my daily load, that's yours. Or say, hey, I need to open this part of my gate a little bit and help somebody out because that's an unexpected burden that came their way. Get it? Get it? This is good stuff. This will change your life. All right. I want to give you a takeaway right here. Something you can do this week. As stuff comes your way, as people come your way, ask yourself, as they bring things to you, say, is this a daily responsibility on their part, or is this an unexpected burden that I need to help them out with? This stuff's going to start coming at you pretty quick, but start categorizing things that way and determine which one is it. Or yourself, if you have to bring something to somebody, say, is this my responsibility? Is this my daily load? Or is this an unexpected burden that came my way? That's something for you to do this week. Paul is telling us we need to carry each other's unexpected burdens and carry our own daily loads. So let's take a look at some boundaries here. What color should I use? Use blue. Let's take a look at some boundaries. We talked about these hedgerows, these fences, and I want to look at what some of these actually are. So this, like we said before, this is your property. This is your life. Kevin, this is your life. Can you see it? That's your life right there, all right? That's your life. All right, this is the piece of property that God told you to own. Jeff, that's your life, buddy, all right? The first boundary we're going to use to mark our property is the boundary of words. Boundary of words. The most basic word you can use when establishing boundaries is the word no. Say that with me. No. One more time, louder. No. Absolutely. Boundary of no. This is what I told my friend. I told him politely, I told him no. No, I said, it is not my responsibility to drive 2 hours out of my way each week simply because you don't want to pay your insurance and your registration. Paying your insurance and your registration, that's your responsibility, just like it is my responsibility to pay my insurance and registration. But there's more. There's actually 7 boundaries. So here, we're going to take a look at the second one. Physical or geographical distance. I'll try and fit that in here. If you need to know how to spell geographical and can't see it there, ask somebody who knows how to spell, because that's probably wrong. All right, physical or geographical distance. This is an interesting one, because Jesus used this one. You ever read in the Bible where Jesus withdrew from the crowds, went up alone by himself? He needed that time away. He needed to put that border in his life and say, you know what, I just need to step away from these people right now and take care of my own health in this situation. That he needed to put that marker in his life, and he did. Back in the 80s, there was a young man, his name was Tommy Moe. Now, Tommy found himself in trouble. He lived in Colorado. He was a teenager. He found himself in trouble. He got hooked on drugs and alcohol, and his life was just going to be a mess. So Tommy's father saw this was going on, and Tommy's father said, I need to do something about this. I need to put in the boundary of geographical distance. I need to step in for my son and help him out here. So Tommy's father, pretty extreme guy, took his son and they moved to Alaska. They got him completely out of the area, away from all that stuff, took him to Alaska, had Tommy work with him on a logging camp. So Tommy worked there. Well, Tommy started to get into skiing, picked up skiing. Tommy was pretty good. In the 80s, Tommy went to the Olympics. He won a gold medal, first American to do that in many, many years. 1984, Tommy was in the Olympics again. He won 2 gold medals. First American to do that. Tommy's father saw the need that he had to get a geographical distance in Tommy's life, and that's what he did. They got him out of there. I use this when I'm on diets. I use this one. If I need a geographical distance, I need to stay out of Panera Bread. I need to stay out of Burger King. If I'm driving down the road and I got to use the bathroom, I'll go into like Tractor Supply because they don't have very good things to eat in there. So I use that geographical distance in that area. All right, the third one. Third boundary we have is truth. Truth. My whole life I've had this tape running over and over in my head that said, you know what, you don't have what it takes. By the way, I'm fine. I'm fine. I got over that. But it says, you know what, you don't have what it takes. You're not going to accomplish anything. And sometimes people would say the same thing. They'd put me down. They'd say, you know what, you're not very talented. And I have to put my truth boundary up and say, you know what, no, you're wrong. No, you know what, I'm pretty talented. I can pretty much build anything. I can pretty much fix anything. My clients that I work for, they're impressed with the level of work that I do. So you know what? I'm not going to allow that untruth to come through. It's going to hit my truth boundary, and I'm going to send it back. This is a boundary that we're all going to have to use because there's going to be people telling you that all the time. They're going to tell you you're not good enough. They're going to tell you that you're worthless, you're unqualified. We need to take a step back from that situation. We need to remove our emotions from that situation and remove the history and the drama, and we need to evaluate that situation and ask ourselves, what is the reality of the situation? And we need to allow only truth to pass through that truth boundary. All right, the fourth boundary is the boundary of time. boundary of time. Taking time from a person or a project, that can be a very important boundary in establishing a property's health. My good friend Drew, he decided to save himself some money, and he decided to use the skills that God gave him and build his own house by himself. He spent July and August just cutting down trees, just running chainsaw all day long. He was pouring the foundation, digging the foundation, pouring the foundation, building the walls, the framing, the whole thing. Well, he found around December, he was out of gas. His wife came to him and she said, "You know what?" She goes, "I feel like a single parent raising these kids by myself. You're never here. You're always over there." She goes, "I don't even know you anymore." He was confused because he was doing this, or he felt he was doing this for her, building her a home. So he said, "You know what? Our marriage is taking a hit here. I need to take a step back from this. I need to take some time away." So that's what he did. He took a couple weeks off. He would drive by the house. He'd drive by it out there, see the piles of wood and the shingles, and it just sat there. Somebody came and took it. They did. He wasn't there to stop him. He had to take that time away to get himself right again and then step back into it, and that's exactly what he did. All right. What do we have here? All right, the fifth boundary, other people. Other people. Put that over here. Other people. Sometimes we can use a support group or an accountability person. Can you guys see that, by the way? How's that? Sometimes we can use a support group or accountability person to maintain our property's health. This could be incredibly helpful. I have a friend who's a pastor. He's a pastor down at Zarephath. His name is Rob Kruver. And, if I call Rob, I can't get through to him. If I call his office, he has a secretary pick up the phone. But I can't get through. Now, I know Rob loves me. I know he likes me. We'll go out for coffee or go on a motorcycle ride or something like that. That's cool, but when he's at work, I can't call him directly. He has somebody kind of filtering that stuff for him. If I call him up and he didn't have a secretary, I'd be, "Hey, Rob, I saw this neat motorcycle seat on eBay, and I was thinking of getting that, and saw this neat paint job on a bike. What do you think about that?" He doesn't need that. He's a busy guy. He doesn't need 10 Scots calling him all day long. He'd never get anything done. So he has a secretary filter that information, get him the necessary information that he needs. He owns his life by setting the boundary of other people. Now the sixth boundary, consequences. We're here. Oh well. Consequences. All right, you can spell it out yourself. All right, consequences. I had a family member. Do you need me to spell that for you? Okay. Consequences. I had a family member who, when he was in his 20s, he was incredibly abusive. He lived at home, incredibly abusive to his family, disrespecting the rules in his house, didn't care. He'd bring drugs in the house, alcohol, whole thing. Didn't care. Physically abusive to his family, mentally abusive. Well, after many, many warnings, his father told him, he said, "Todd, you have to leave the house. We've tried other ways. The consequence of your decision is you have to leave the house." So he did. He kicked him out. But the father said, "You know what? I love you. If you don't have a place to stay, you could stay in the barn behind the house, but you're not welcome in here." And that's what he did. For half a year, he lived in that barn outside in the house. No heat, no water. He lived out there right through the winter. He'd go up to Burger King and wash up there, use the bathroom. That's where he'd get his water from. And the father would look out. He'd see his son out there, and his heart would break because that's his son. But the father knew he had to put the boundary of consequences into effect in order for his own health and the health of his family. So that's what he did. Now, Todd, if you ask him today, he's great today. Family, responsible, kids, wife, whole thing. Life is great. If you ask him, he's going to say that time in the barn was a key moment in his life for turning around. So the boundary of consequences. And the last boundary, emotional distance. Emotional distance. All right. Be careful with this one. This one is a temporary one. This one, God will allow us to use so that our hearts can have a safe place to heal. This is one that, this is a temporary one. There are times when we just need to pull away from people emotionally and say, you know what, I just need time to sort this thing out, and that's okay. I do some counseling for some people. I help out with counseling, and we have one guy that came to us last year, and he came with this whole big mess of problems, and I love the guy. I care about the guy. So he came to us with these problems, and we laid out things for him to do, steps for him to do to get these issues back in order. Well, he didn't do them, and he refuses to do them, and his life is on a continual downward spiral. If I was connected to him emotionally, every time his life goes down, mine would too. I would be drawn down with every stupid decision he makes. So I kind of have to pull back and say, you know what? I love him. I want you to put these things into effect, but I can't invest emotionally in your life. And you do that for a while. You do that, and then you can reinvest again when you see them starting to climb back up again, because you need to pull away while that stuff is going on. All right, there's your 7 boundaries. We're going to add one more, and this is going to be a gate. This is going to be a gate. I'll kind of do a dotted line here. This gate. That gate is going to let you determine who you want on your property. You're the one who opens and controls that gate. You're going to allow certain people on there, and you're going to keep other people out. If somebody, and you can be flexible with this, somebody says, hey, you know what, I know you said we could have 2 hours, but can you give me maybe another one or a couple more? Well, that's up to you. If you want to open your gate and maybe give that person a little bit more time, that's completely fine. That's your decision. All right. So your takeaway this week, something for you to do this week, evaluate which boundaries you're setting in your life. Which one of these are you setting? Which one of these are you not setting in your life? It's something to think about. Okay. We're going to take a look at our property now. We're going to see, what are these boundaries protecting? What is inside of our property here? All right, this is going to be good. This is what I'm responsible for. This is very important to know, because what you're responsible for in your own life, other people are responsible for in their lives. All right, so the first thing that you're responsible for are your feelings. Here, I'll do this in green. I hope these are dry eraser things. Okay, the first one is your feelings. Your feelings are on your property. You own your feelings. You are responsible for how you act on your initial feelings and for how long you will harbor those feelings. Here's what I mean. If you went out for a blind date and you got yourself all ready, you looked forward to this blind date for a whole week, you got your hair all done up, and you're just looking your very best, and you're sitting in that restaurant, and that person never shows up after 10 minutes. And you're just sitting there. 20 minutes passes, and you're sitting there, and then you realize this person's not going to show up. Your initial feelings are going to be, you know what? This really stinks. You know? Now, you're responsible for whether or not you get up and you start throwing things around that place and have a temper tantrum. That's your responsibility. You're also responsible for how long you harbor those feelings. If 2 weeks later, somebody comes and knocks on your door because they haven't seen you, and you're sitting in your apartment and you haven't showered in 2 weeks, and your curtains are all pulled down and it's dark in there, and you're just sitting there all depressed because this person never showed up, that's your responsibility. Your feelings are your responsibility. Last year, Ryan went off to Mexico to go spend it with a friend, and she got to the airport in Mexico. How do you pronounce where it was? Cabo San Lucas? Okay, so she got to the airport down there, and her friend never showed up. It was just going to be her and her friend staying in Mexico for a week. Her friend never showed up. Her friend missed the flight. And so Her friend never got another ticket. So here's Ryan in Mexico realizing she's going to have to spend a week in Mexico all by herself. No, she had a choice. She could have, well, initially, you know, the thought was, well, I'm not coming. Well, you know what? That really sucks. You know? That really stinks. I got to spend a week here. But she had a choice. What was she going to do at that point? She wasn't going to throw a temper tantrum there in the airport. She's responsible for her she's responsible for her feelings, and she also didn't spend the week moping around, all depressed, all upset because her friend never showed up. There's a situation, but my feelings are, I'm going to continue to have a good time here. So that's your feelings. You own your feelings, you're in charge of them. Oftentimes the boundary of truth goes a long way in protecting your feelings. Next thing our property is responsible for is our attitudes. Our attitudes. We choose to be positive. Your attitude is going to be based on what you decide to do in the long term with your feelings. If you're struggling with setting unhealthy boundaries in the area of feelings, then chances are you're going to struggle with boundaries in the area of attitudes. You can choose to be positive. You can choose to be positive in spite of negative circumstances. It's all what you decide to cultivate in your heart. All right, the third thing on our properties are behaviors. Behaviors. Each of us are responsible for our behaviors. Back in the 7th grade, I sold a BB gun to a fellow named Mike. He gave me the money for it. I forget how much it was, but he gave me the money for that BB gun, and he went off. And I got a call the next day saying that he got in trouble with the police. He went over to the middle school and started shooting at the windows. Well, the police showed up, they got him, and what did he do? He said, well, it's not my fault, it's Scott's fault. He sold me the BB gun. I said, no, I'm going to let you own that decision that you made there. I'm going to let you own that one. You own your behaviors, I own my behaviors. I did not make you go shoot those windows out. Nobody makes me do anything. Nobody makes you do anything. Those are on us, on our property. All right, the fourth thing that's on our property, choices. By the way, there are 10 of these, so keep room on your paper. I know a guy who likes to hire prostitutes. What can I say? I do. So we met with this guy and told him, what you're doing is not good. You need to stop doing that. I mean, we counseled with this guy, and he decided at the end of everything, no, you know what? I'm going to keep doing it. I enjoy it. I'm going to keep doing it. That's his choice. It's not my choice if he keeps doing that. It's not your choice. That's his choice. You and I are responsible for what's on our own properties. You and I are not responsible for making choices that others make. He is responsible for his choices, you're responsible for yours, and I'm responsible for mine. All right, next thing, values. Next thing on our property that we all own, values. One of the biggest areas I see this in is dating. What are your values in dating? What's right, what's wrong? What does God want me to do or not do? If you're a Christian, are you making sure that the people you're dating have the same spiritual beliefs that you do? That they have the same values that you do? You can choose, you and I can choose who we date. I choose to date my wife, and that's it. You and I can make our own choices, and that's on our property. All right, next thing. Limits. You determine how much time you're going to spend with somebody. You say to somebody, this is how much time I have, this is how much time I'm going to give you. That's your choice. We set our limits. Next one, talents. Our talents. God has given each of you a gift. He's given each of you a skill and ability to use to further His kingdom, and it's up to you and I what we do with those gifts. No one else is responsible for that. No one else is going to determine that for you. What you do with that is your responsibility. What I do with that is my responsibility. All right, next one. Thoughts. Your thoughts. What do you spend your time feeding your mind with? What are the lyrics of the songs you listen to? What are the shows you watch? What are the things you see on the internet? Those all go to your thoughts. What do you chew over in your mind and mull over and over again and roll over in your mind? What are the thoughts you think about other people? Those are your responsibility. All right, there are two more. Desires. Your desires. You have complete ownership of your desires. God has given you some desires, and you have cultivated some desires of your own. All right, lastly, who you love. No. That's you. Who you love. Love is your choice, and it's much more than frilly feelings. It takes work and it takes sacrifice. And so a great definition for love is this: wanting the best for someone and be willing to place their desires above your own. Love is wanting the best for someone and be willing to place their desires above your own. You choose who you will love. Now, all these things are my responsibility, and these borders protect my responsibilities. Get it? All right. Now, the thing you need to tell yourself, and I need to remind myself, is I'm not responsible for these on somebody else's property. I don't own these. I don't make these decisions or choices for anybody else. You're responsible for your own. That's why the Apostle Paul instructed us that we should each carry our own daily load. All right, I have a takeaway for this one. Ask yourself this question: have I accepted the responsibility for my own life? Or am I standing on somebody else's property and expecting or owning things on their property? Are you having trouble with that? Are you having trouble, maybe you're standing on someone else's property, or maybe you're not taking ownership of some of these things. If you're having trouble with that, God has the answer for that. You see, there's going to be some problems that we deal with, and many of the problems that we deal with are going to come when boundaries are unclear or undefined, or when they're not enforced. Many of the things we're going to experience are going to come as a result of that. If you're having trouble with that, hey, we're going to take a look. We're going to take a look at what we call 4 boundary breakers. Boundary breakers are 4 categories or types of people that maybe you're this type of person, maybe this kind of person is coming at you. But there's 4 boundary breakers that they're going to cause problems when you're trying to enforce boundaries. The first group of boundary breakers are called compliance. Compliance, how do I spell that? Let me try and swing this around here and write upside down. Compliance, all right. Compliance. We become compliant when our boundaries are fuzzy or ambiguous. When others come around and seek to take possession of a piece of a compliance life, the compliant humbly gives in. Compliance allow the needs and demands of others to enter their property because their boundaries have either never been defined or they're not clearly stated or put into effect. I thought the best way for you to see what a compliant looks like is to take a look at what a compliant is. Who is a compliant? Jerry. Jerry tried to establish a boundary, and when his friends started pushing back, Jerry caved in. Some compliants believe that saying no is going to hurt other people's feelings, that it will cause other people to be angry. Others feel that it'll make them look selfish or unspiritual. When they do that, they end up taking on responsibilities that aren't really theirs. If this sounds like a boundary problem that you have, that you're facing, here's a couple things you could do. The first thing you could do is take a survey of your property. Determine where your boundaries should be. What is the boundary you should be using? So if you have a family member or friends who has maybe a drinking problem or some other kind of addiction, and it is really affecting your property or your boundary line, you need to do this. Whenever you get together, there's always going to be that time, that time when all the booze comes out, or when the gossip's starting or the complaining begins. It's a difficult situation for a lot of people, but it's going to be especially difficult for compliance. But take a survey of your property. Determine where the boundaries should be. And you know what? You may not be able to stop that person from drinking, but you can put up the boundary and say, you know what? When that time comes around, I'm going to get up and remove myself from that situation. Second thing you could do is communicate and enforce your boundaries and post signs. Learn to say no. Like we just said about the family here, you may not be able to keep your family and friends from maybe engaging in that activity, but that's on their property. They own their choices and their decisions. What you could do is respectfully, seriously here, respectfully, don't be a jerk or a holier-than-thou person, respectfully get up and politely remove yourself from the situation. And put into place that, if it's at your own place, if it's at your own house that this is going on, let them know that you're not going to tolerate that stuff. That's what you could do if you're a compliant. When compliants do these things, they'll see the things in their own property kind of starting to fall into place. All right. The second group of boundary breakers, avoidance. Avoidance. Avoidance put up boundaries that are like brick walls. They hide behind them and they refuse to let anyone in. They won't let anyone to help them with their burdens, even if they're really heavy, excessive burdens. Avoidance won't let anybody through that brick wall that they put up. In the early 1900s, I'm going to look at a clip here. In the early 1900s, Randolph Juna was a golf prodigy. He was incredibly good at golf. Until World War I happened. They sent him off to the war. They put Randolph Juna in charge of a whole platoon of guys, and his whole platoon got wiped out completely. So Randolph comes back from the war, the only guy that survived, feeling guilty, depressed, beat down. Just didn't want to do anything. So a golf tournament was coming around, a big golf tour, and the townspeople were trying to get Randolph Juna to go play golf in this golf tournament because he was so incredibly great. And he wouldn't do it. All these people trying to convince him that this is what he needs to do, and he wouldn't do it. We're picking up the scene here where he kind of just is taking a step out in that direction. But we're going to see what an avoidant looks like, what somebody looks like when they won't let anyone in. Are people with the heart of serving. Those are people are oftentimes are people that won't receive help. They'll give a lot of help. But they often have times opening up their property to allow somebody on to help them when they need it. All right, takeaway for avoidance. Open your gate. Open your gate and allow people to come onto your property who are offering to help you. There's going to be times in your life where your burden can be lighter when you allow these people to help you. Juna needed to swing his gate open and say, you know what, I do need help. I'm not right here. I need help. This is where avoidance can find help with boundary breaking. All right, the third group of boundary breakers is called controllers. Controllers. I think anyone that has an aunt or a grandmother that loves to cook knows what a controller is. When you're sitting there at their table and you're full and you push the plate away, the controller will push the plate back to you and fill it up again. Controllers. Controllers don't take no for an answer. Controllers have no problem pushing back on a boundary. Just like the compliant has trouble hearing no, or saying no, the controller has trouble hearing no. Saying no to a controller is met with very little success. Instead, the controller pushes and tries to insist that you follow their desires, and then they try to own your actions and your behaviors. I got a video here of a controller. Controllers. Interesting, if you look at Raymond, he was a compliant. The controller kind of pushed through his boundary, and she came on there. But controllers have no problem pushing back on people's boundaries that have been established. They like to make our choices and set our limits and our behaviors. They often refuse to accept responsibility of their own. I got a friend, John, and John's brother did some pretty stupid things and was facing some jail time. Well, John's brother went to John, and he was telling the story. John's brother went to John and said, I need money for bail or I'm going to have to go to jail. John said, I don't have that money. I don't have that kind of money. So John's brother went to him and he said, you need to get me that money. If you don't get me that money, I'm going to go to jail and it's going to be your fault. Controllers don't want to take responsibility for their own actions. They just want to help manage and control other people's properties. I heard that, I thought, wow, I mean, controllers always try to control and own a piece of somebody's property. Watch out for controllers. All right, takeaway for controllers. Controllers need to obey the no trespassing signs that they see. And secondly, controllers need to own their own property, just like the younger brother. Okay, the third, that's 3 boundary breakers. We have one more, that's the boundary non-responsives. Non-responsive. All right. Just like the avoidant will refuse to accept any help, the non-responsive will refuse to give any help. They live behind their boundaries and lock their gates and never allow anybody on their property, or they never step out of their property to go help anybody else. Even when they see somebody with an unexpected burden, they won't go help. So one more time, let's take a look at a video of the needs of others. They confuse a person's cry for help as a lack of responsibility on the person's part. Non-responsives lock their helpfulness away and become absorbed within themselves and their own needs. A takeaway for a non-responsive. What's the takeaway? Well, the answer is found in Philippians 2:4 for the non-responsive. Don't be interested only in your own lives, but be interested in the lives of others. Well, looking over this list of boundaries, boundary breakers, which one of these things would you say you're struggling with? Which one of those is a struggle for you? Put a check mark next to it. Maybe it's the non-responsive. Do you walk through life and see people with legitimate needs and heavy burdens and say, you know what, that's not my problem? And instead of having a healthy boundary, you're boundary breaking when you're being a non-responsive. If that's you, put a check marks next to it. Maybe you're a controller. Are you trying to manipulate someone or do something that you want them to do that's really their choice? If you're doing that, you're a controller. You need to say to yourself, you know what, it's okay for me to offer advice, but it's not okay for me to manipulate and force my way onto that person's property and make that decision for them. Maybe you're a compliant, like Jerry in the first scene. When people push against you, when they push against your boundaries, you're going to break through. Maybe you're a compliant. If you are, if you just give in when people do that, you're going to have a whole lot of trouble in life. You're going to have people running your life for you, and it's just going to be a mess. And then there's the avoidant, Bagger Vance. There's the avoidant. Funny thing, you don't realize it until the very end, that Bagger Vance, he's walking down the beach, and he just disappears. He disappears. He could have been, the Holy Spirit, maybe an angel, but it's clear that he was sent by God. He was sent by God to Bagger, or to Junor, to give him some help. Junor was trying to avoid him, and you know what? We can get to that place in our lives too. Maybe God is sending a Bagger Vance into your life. Open your gate and allow them onto your property. So looking back at the ideas that we've covered tonight, we see that if we want to have a healthy personal life, we're going to have to set boundaries. We're going to have to own what's on our property. Just like the physical land needs physical boundaries, our life needs mental and emotional boundaries in order to maintain a healthy and emotional and spiritual life. These boundaries establish what's mine, what's not mine, what I own, what I don't own. They distinguish what is my responsibility, what is not my responsibility. They keep the good stuff in, the bad stuff out. We need to set up our spiritual, emotional, physical boundaries so that we're in control of what we let in our gate. And we need to put that so that it protects what's on our property, the things that we're responsible for. And lastly, always keep an eye out for boundary breakers. Make sure that you're not falling into one of those categories. One of those categories will just lead you into unhealthy boundaries and an unhealthy life. Following Paul's words in Galatians 6:2-5, it's going to be work. It's going to be a lot of work to put this stuff into effect. Start small. Build up from there. But I'll tell you what, I guarantee it's going to be worth it when you get those boundaries put in place. As you establish these boundaries, you're going to continue to grow and develop and mature. You're going to turn into a responsible, compassionate Christian that God would have you be if you're not already. Would you pray with me? Lord, we thank you for tonight. Thank you for the truth in your words, for the words of the Apostle Paul, Lord, that lay out for us how we're supposed to live, how we can have a healthy life, Lord. And Lord, as we go out this week, reveal to us what is on our property. What's our responsibility? What's the responsibility of others, Lord? Help us to stay on our property. If need be, help us to open the gate, allow people onto our property, Lord, if that's the case. Lord, if we see somebody else with a legitimate need in their life, help us, Lord, to go help them. Or maybe we have a problem stepping on other people's property, Lord, and having them things that they should be carrying, Lord, we tend to be carrying them for them. Help us, Lord, to step off of their property and to be concerned about growing close to you, Lord, and just putting those boundaries in place that we need. Lord, we thank you. Thank you for tonight. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.